I'd like to introduce a new tool I wrote over the last week. This is the stereo photo cropping tool. If you can, I'd recommend using stereoscopic player to watch this video, and make sure you check the half width option when you open the file. If you're watching on YouTube, you can still follow along, but you'll probably be seeing two images side by side instead. And you can use the cross-eyed viewing technique to see it in 3D, but if you can use stereoscopic player, that'll be better. A little background firstly. I do a bunch of work in the 3D vision modding community, and I'm pretty well known there. And I also do some stereo photography. But one of my problems is I currently have a bunch of 3D photos sitting on my hard drive that are in need of some minor editing, but editing 3D photos is really hard, even for minor editing. I've done a few of them by hand, and it is possible, but it's really fiddly and time consuming, and it takes a lot of trial and error to get them right. There are some existing tools to help, but they aren't really that much better than just doing it by hand. The thing is though, not everything needs to be as hard as it currently is. Two tasks that you want to perform on just about any stereo photo are adjusting the stereo parallax and cropping the images, and that's what this tool is designed to solve. Now here I've loaded up a photo that I took last week that I'm really happy with. I love the model's pose, the lighting's perfect, I love the dress, especially how it reflects the light in 3D. There's no technical issues with this photo, and I remember to keep my finger away from the second lens this time, which is an easy mistake to make on this particular camera. It's a pretty good shot and just needs a couple of minor tweaks. Now if you're curious, I took this photo using a Fujifilm FinePix Real 3D W3 camera. It's one of the more popular 3D cameras on the market, you can't really go wrong with it. Now firstly I need to adjust the stereo parallax. Now that sets the offset between the two images and effectively moves them forwards and backwards. If you're familiar with 3D vision, then you might be used to the separation and convergence controls we have there. There's really nothing quite like that in photography, certainly nothing you can do in post anyway. You can ask me about my experiments with tilt shift lenses another time. Parallax is kind of a poor man's substitute for those two. So when adjusting the parallax, there's probably two main things you want to keep in mind. You want to be careful of anything on the edge of the photo that sticks out. In this case I asked the model to reach out towards the camera to provide something interesting in 3D, but I have a stereo inversion down where her arm is cut off at the bottom of the photo. So the brain gets confused by this situation because it sees something being obscured by something else that appears to be behind it, and that should never happen in real life. And you lose some of the stereo perception around the area as a result. So I need to move the entire image backwards until her arm is behind the edge of the photo. So about there will do. Now her hand's still popping out of the photo in the middle, but that's okay because there's nothing creating a stereo inversion there, and a bit of pop out like that can look quite good in 3D. Now the other issue you want to be aware of with parallax is making sure that the background doesn't violate infinity. That is, that nothing in the background is more than about 6 centimeters apart when measured without your glasses at whatever size the photo is going to be viewed at. Now therein lies the problem, that if you're sending the photo to someone else over the internet, you don't necessarily know how large they will try to view it, but it is still something to keep in mind. Anyway, moving on. So you might notice down here on the left of the photo there's something on the side. That's actually the reflector that the assistant was holding for the lighting. Now if this was a 2D photo, I might try to use the clone tool in the GIMP or Photoshop to remove that, but I wouldn't really recommend trying that in a 3D photo. It tends to destroy the 3D and it stands out like a sore thumb. You might be able to get away with it in some circumstances if it's on like a very dark area of the frame or a clear blue sky or something like that, but in here there's a lot of texture, so it would be very hard to convincingly clone both images that they stereo fuse properly. But since this is on the edge, I can just crop it. Easy enough. Now cropping in this tool is done pretty simply. Just hold down Control and drag any of the borders of the photo. But since this is a 3D photo, I'm not just restricted to cropping things left and right. I can also crop things back and forwards. So now I would personally recommend setting the crop so that it's slightly in front of anything that obscures. Same kind of reason that we have that we needed to adjust the parallax to avoid a stereo inversion on her arm. So I'll move the left crop so that the ground is all behind it, and I'll move the crop on the right to the front so that all of these twigs are behind it, and then that's just a lot more comfortable to view. Now when you save a an image with this tool, you'll notice that it will leave black bars on one or both sides of the image. That's intentional. It does that to maintain the parallax and crop adjustments while keeping both left and right images the same width. Now, depending on where you're going to display the image, you might prefer the bars not to be black. You might want them white or something else. You can press B to cycle the background between black, white and a couple of shades of grey. If you do want something a little bit more exotic than that, you can always open it up in the GIMP or Photoshop and fix it up. That's pretty much all there is to it. It currently saves the image automatically when you quit with Escape. I may add more functionality to this later on as I need it. I've got a few more ideas that I want to play around with. But for now, at least, I feel like I can finally start actually editing some of my 3D photos without just spending a whole day on each one of them. You can download this program for free from my GitHub page. It's free and open source. And if you find it useful, I'd encourage you to consider supporting me on Patreon so that I can keep creating more cool stuff like this. Thanks very much.